Hey, what's going on YouTube? Nerfed here, and I just want to put a video out on my Invoker, Cold Monk, Ice Strike, Shatter build. Uh, I've been streaming on Twitch and TikTok, and I've been getting questions about the build and how it works. And so I figured I'd put a video out today before we go live later, so that way if I get asked in chat, I have a video I can refer you guys to. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so this is kind of your traditional Path of Exile 1, convert most of your fizz, if not all of your fizz, into cold damage so that we're building chill, we're freezing enemies, and then we're using that freeze to basically shatter the screen. I'll get a little gameplay in here for you guys once we roll a map, but first I kind of just want to go over some of the important things about the build. Now, before we get deep into the build, I want to kind of explain why I went with the kind of character that I did. And for the most part, it's for survivability. I used to be a big hardcore Path of Exile player in Path of Exile 1, and one thing that you just get into a habit of is building survivability into your build. And with Path of Exile 2, in the way it seems like the devs are wanting to give us a little more challenging combat, it seems like even in softcore, we still need to build that survivability. And survivability can look like many different things, and as I explain the build, you'll see how we're stacking on many little things to create a lot of survivability in our maps. As you can see here, I'm still completing my tier 10 maps, so I haven't gone all the way through. I haven't fought pinnacle bosses yet. Again, I was just getting asked for the build guide, so why not put it out? I will be updating this character as we go. So, first thing I want to get into is leveling. Leveling as a monk was pretty straightforward. We hardly changed anything once we got to level 14. We pretty much just used quarterstaff up until we got Ice Strike. I believe you get Ice Strike at 14, so we leveled quarterstaff. Now, a lot of people seem to be leveling with bows as a monk from 1 until 14 before they get Ice Strike, because apparently that feels better. And considering that we are using dexterity, you're already getting that accuracy rating built into your character. So it doesn't actually hurt to go bows until maybe 14, which then you'll just want to switch to Ice Strike. Ice Strike's going to be our main combat ability throughout leveling. You're pretty much never going to change this unless you want to play around with different skills throughout your leveling experience like I did, but for the most part, I felt Ice Strike is just what I'm looking for, not only in something that makes leveling feel easy, but something that gives us good survivability as well. So the way this works is basically it's a 3-strike attack. Your first 2 strikes will basically kind of teleport you to the mob. The second attack will then teleport you again if you're targeting a different mob, and then the third attack would be basically a powerful smash attack. We utilize those little teleports sometimes to get us out of situations where we're getting surrounded by enemies. So that is part of our survivability as well. You'll pretty much not need to change this as you're just going through Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, just killing the mobs, getting to each zone. You're pretty much just going to use Ice Strike. There's not a whole lot of reason to use anything else. And then whenever you get to a rare, or maybe you get to a boss mob, you're going to put down Tempest Spell. This is pretty much my leveling experience. I never really felt like I needed much more than just using Ice Strike, and then when I needed to kill a big pack or a rare or a boss, I put down Tempest Spell and I smack the bell and it freezes the mobs or the boss and then they die. I cannot explain enough just how easy the leveling process is with this. However, one thing you need to understand in Path of Exile is that there's really 2 different types of ways to do damage. You have attacks and you have spells, okay? The important thing about attacks is that most of your damage is going to be based off of your weapon. Whereas for spells, most of your damage, a lot of your damage is going to be based mostly off the level of your spell. That's why it's really, really important, almost way more important, to make sure that you're getting plus level to spells, because that's where a big bulk of your damage comes from. Now, a lot of that knowledge does come from Path of Exile 1. I don't know how the scaling really interacts with Path of Exile 2 in terms of plus level to melee skills versus plus level to spells in terms of damage. Traditionally, most of your damage has always come from your weapon when you're attacking. So, when you are going through the axe, when you are leveling up, it is very, very important to remember to update your weapon as you're leveling. If you do not keep your weapon up to date, you will not have a good leveling experience. Bosses will be hard to kill. You may find yourself getting swarmed in packs more because you're not doing enough cold damage to make sure you get the chill, to make sure you get the freeze, to make sure you get the shatter. So, important lesson number 1 with the gear, make sure that you are using a very as high DPS weapon as you can. For mine, since we're converting 80% of our physical damage to cold damage, I am mostly just getting physical damage on my staff. It is perfectly fine if you have physical damage and cold damage on the staff. If you have percent increased physical damage, that's good. If you have percent increased elemental damage to attacks, that is also good. But ideally, you want as much fizz as you can get on the weapon or as much cold as you can get on the weapon, and then, a percent modifier to make that even higher. I just went with physical because it's the easiest one for me to just quickly scan on the ground. I ID it. Does it have high fizz? Yes or no? If not, I don't worry about it. If it does, great. Let's pick this up and maybe we craft on it. And you're pretty much going to do that through the leveling process of, new staff. Let's go ahead and ID. It's blue. Okay, it's got some good fizz on it. This is something that we might want to regal because it can be a potential upgrade. When you're doing builds where you're using a lot of different elements, then you kind of have to keep track of more of that. With this, it's very simple. We're just stacking physical damage, converting it to cold, and any extra cold damage we get on top of that is great. So leveling, Ice Strike, Tempest Spell, you're pretty much not going to add much else until you get to closer to the end game and once you have your Ascendancy done. So, next thing I want to go over is the Ascendancy. We are not Uber Ascended yet. I am level 82. I am still working on my tier 10 maps. I believe that you need to get a level 75 Sanctum or Ultimatum to drop in order for it to be able to be done for Uber Lab. So even without Uber Lab, we're doing just fine in maps. Our damage is great, phenomenal. I have no complaints about the damage. I have no complaints about the survivability. So going over our Ascendancy tree, the first node that we're going to take that I recommend is your chill effect in I Am the Blizzard. So gain 10% of damage as extra cold damage on freezing enemies, create chilled ground. So if you're attacking one mob and you create chilled ground under that mob, chilled ground chills those standing in it and lasts 6 seconds by default. So now all those mobs that are coming in closer to you are now getting chilled as they're getting closer to you, which, as that stacks up when you're doing damage, it's going to cause the freeze. The freeze is the main crux of the build. So we then have 12% increased elemental damage here. Our next Ascendancy is going to be And I Shall Rage, which grants Unbound Avatar, which is a skill right here. And basically the way this works is as we cause elemental ailments on enemies, we build up our Unbound Fury, and then once we have max stacks of Unbound Fury, which is 100, we just get a button we press, and now we do a bunch more damage. So we do 40% more elemental damage while unbound. We do 40% more elemental ailment buildup while unbound, which helps us build up our chill and freeze. We have 80% more chance to inflict elemental ailments while unbound. So again, inflicting the chill initially, and then the elemental ailment buildup of the chill, leading to the freeze, leading to them shattering when they die. So then for our Merciless Lab, we went Lead Me Through Grace. This is a good way to get a decent amount of spirit on your build, depending on the type of body armor that you're wearing. So gain 1 spirit for every 6 energy shield on equipped body armor, gain 1 spirit for every 15 evasion rating on equipped body armor. This is really good because the chest piece that we have gives us 1,339 evasion rating, meaning that, divide that by 15, that's how much extra spirit we're going to get onto our build. Now, the downside is you can't put spirit on any of your gear anymore. So if you have any spirit on your amulet or on your chest, it is not going to affect your character. It is a wasted slot. So if you still have that on your gear when you get this node, it's time to probably replace that piece with something that can have, a placeholder that's not spirit. So that can open up something else on your build as well. But why do we build spirit on a monk? So if you've heard of spirit recently, you probably heard most of it is being used from summoner builds, right? A lot of summoners have to summon their minions. They have to reserve that spirit in order to summon a certain amount of minions. And our build reserves spirit as well, just in a different way of instead of having minions that we spawn, we just buff our character up to be even stronger by reserving that spirit. So as you see here, we have 189 total spirit. We have 11 spirit left over because the chest was upgraded recently and I just don't have a way to consume all of it. But basically what this allows is multiple buffs to be active at the same time that really build our character. Okay, so this is kind of going to be a two-part process when we go over our tree because our skills here are also going to complement what we pick on the tree. And it's very important that you have these notes. So let's go over our passive tree, and then I will explain how the skills that we use work together in the tree. So first thing I did is you start here on the tree, basically just start on this section. I came in here and I immediately took skill speed and attack damage because in the early game, we really just want to make sure that we're doing enough damage to kill things. And defenses are not as important within the first act or so. So then we go just more into damage. I went here. There wasn't a lot of good early game options. I would recommend if you're having any mana regen issues, you take flow state and just pass through this first and then continue on. But if you're not having mana issues, you could do Crashing Wave, which just gives you 30% increased damage if you dealt a critical hit in the past 8 seconds. Again, the start of this isn't great just because you're not dealing a whole lot of critical hits, which means you're not benefiting from Crashing Wave a whole lot, but it is still a possible bonus that you can get. Whereas Flow State just gives you the 5% increased skill speed and 50% mana regen. You just path through that, and then later you can respec this if you want. Then you have a little evasion rating, and maximum energy shield here. I actually did not take these early. I took these later. So these were kind of some filler nodes of, hey, I need to try to max out my evasion rating now that we're in maps. We need to get as much evasion as possible. I ended up later going to these nodes. You can go into them early while you're leveling. There's nothing wrong with having a good amount of evasion rating and energy shield while you're leveling. Just remember, you're going to be capped by the amount of gear you have. So if you don't have good gear that has a decent amount of evasion rating and energy shield, these nodes aren't going to be very useful, whereas you could probably take something that gives you more attack speed or damage. So again, with the tree, it's not any specific to you have to do this first, but there's just some things that are going to be on the tree that are going to benefit you more early game and benefit you more late game. So for instance, we're not all these crit nodes. I don't even think I started taking these until I was in maps or right before maps. So we path through this tree. We get some mana regeneration rate. We get some tenfold attacks, which is attack speed. We path up here and we took even more attack speed and the 10% reduced cost of skills, which is really useful for leveling because you're combining that mana regen with reducing the cost of your skills. You're using Ice Strike to clear through the area. You're not having to worry about using your mana pot as much. It's nice. This is a good node to have. Then we came up here. You can take the whole wheel if you need to. I think we're just taking this as a filler right now until we have enough points to grab another major node. But basically, I went 1, 2, 3 points here into Interfaith for the evasion rating, energy shield, and reduced effective curses on you. This node here is very, very important, but you don't have to worry about this until much later. This is really once you have enough spirit that you have gathered throughout the story. Then you can, we'll get to resonance in a second, but this is when you'll take this. So while you're leveling, don't worry about resonance. So again, appear, spectral wards, shadow dancing. We went ahead and took these evasion ES nodes for some more survivability. Anything regarding to power charges, again, the power charges that we're getting work with resonance. We're going to go over that in a second. Just know that power charges are late game. Do not take these while you're leveling. They're not going to benefit you. Exposed to the cosmos, damage penetrates 15% cold resistance. Cold exposure you inflict lowers total resistance by an extra 5%. Basically, we just take the cold resistance, we lower it, we penetrate through it, and basically we just do more damage. The less resistance they have to cold, the more damage they're going to take to cold, the more susceptible they'll be to elemental ailments from cold. So this is a really good node to have. Over here, we took our quarterstaff nodes. Now, I haven't gone into one with the storm because quarterstaff skills that consume power charges count as consuming an additional power charge. We're not really using quarterstaff skills that are consuming power charges, or even if we are, I don't think we're really needing to increase this. I don't fully understand if our build's really going to utilize this. I'm sure there's plenty of builds that utilize this pretty well. Right now, I'm leaving this off because I just don't see how it interacts with our build. But once I go over it, and if you see anything that I might be missing on here, please let me know. So over here, we grab enhanced reflexes, increase evasion rating and dexterity. We grab bestial skin, 100% increase evasion rating from equipped body armor. So if you look at our evasion rating here, if I take my body armor off, our evasion rating is 2,616. This gives us 1,339 plus the scaling, but 100% increase to that, so it's effectively doubled. Oh, I actually just bricked my build by taking that off, didn't I? Okay. I actually had to cut because when I took that piece off, I bricked the build because I need the dexterity on here to wear the chest piece. But anyways, once we put this on, as you can see, our evasion rating goes up from, I think it was 2,500 up to 9,311, giving us a 77% chance to evade. This can, of course, go higher as we just keep improving our gear and making sure that we get a lot of quality on our gear. But I'm still fairly new-ish in maps right now. We haven't even really gotten to what technically would be considered red maps. So I feel like right now 77% is pretty good. So those are kind of the basic things on the tree. Now, once you get into the later game, this is where things change. Now we have our spirit. Now we've gone through Act 2, and we've gone through Act 3, and then we've gone through Act 1 again, and 2 again, and 3 again, and we've done our quests, and we've gotten our bonuses, and now we have all this spirit. What do we do with our spirit? First thing I'm going to recommend you do with your spirit, for survivability, I would recommend Ghost Dance. If you don't feel like you have any issues with survivability, then I would recommend Herald Device. So we'll just go top bottom. Herald Device, while active, shattering an enemy with an attack hit will cause an icy explosion that deals attack damage to surrounding enemies. So basically, we're hitting an enemy, it's building up chill, now they're frozen, now we've killed them, and they've exploded, and now they shatter, and that AoE damage hits the enemies around them, which then chills those enemies, causing them to freeze, causing them to shatter. So I'll show how kind of this interaction works. But basically, this is how we're chaining our freezes and shattering. Next, we have Ghost Dance. When hit, consume a Ghost Shroud to recover energy shield equal to 5% of your evasion. So basically, we have 4 Ghost Shrouds up here. Every time we get hit, we get 5% of 9,311 evasion rating, which means the first 4 hits that hit us that got past our evasion rating are now going to give us 5% energy shield. So if it's a small hit, chances are our energy shield won't move at all. If it's a big hit, we'll regain 5% of that energy shield back after that hit. So then basically it just helps with our survivability of trying to make sure we're either not getting shotgunned down by a bunch of mob shooting projectiles, or hopefully we're preventing a one-shot to the best of our ability. It's Path of Exile. You can only avoid one-shots for so long. Next thing that we're going to get into is Charged Infusion. So while active, you gain buffs based on your active charges. However, maintaining the buff consumes charges every few seconds. So what this means is we generate power charges. as we generate those power charges, every 4.8 seconds, one of those power charges gets deleted. And as long as we have power charges, we will get the buff here, 17% more critical hit chance while you have a power charge. This can go up with level, and the percent chance goes up with level, and quality consumes one of each charge at basically a slower rate. So basically what's happening is we're building power charges. They're getting consumed as long as we hold the power charges up, as long as we have one. And it's very important that you understand that you have 17% more critical hit chance while you have a power charge. This is not 17% more critical hit chance per power charge. So whether you have 5 power charges or whether you have 1 power charge, you still only have 17% more critical hit chance. So basically what that means is the more power charges does not equal more power. But we do want more power charges, and we'll explain why in a second. So now, if you're familiar with power charges, or if you're even familiar with power charges in Path of Exile 2, you might be asking, how are we generating our power charges, right? What's the most reliable, laziest way we can generate power charges without losing them before they're consumed within that 4.8 second window? So we use Combat Frenzy. Basically, the way Combat Frenzy works is you gain a frenzy charge when you freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy no more than once every 2.03 seconds. So basically, every 2 seconds, once we freeze an enemy, we can gain a power charge. So we put Profusion in this so that supported skills have 50% chance to grant an additional power charge. So when we get 1 power charge, instead of getting 1, we'll get 2. So why are we generating frenzy charges, though, if we're using power charges? Well, okay, test. I think we're back. Okay, sorry about that. My NVIDIA broadcast crashed, and basically that just turns my mic off and, freezes my camera. So I had to fix that. Anyways, so what we were saying is Resonance gains power charges instead of frenzy charges. Combat Frenzy gains frenzy charges when we freeze. So basically, when we freeze, we gain power charges. When we gain power charge, we have a 50% chance to gain 2 power charges. And then on top of that, it gets even better because there's a note down here that says you have a 5% chance that if you would gain power charges, you instead gain up to your maximum number of power charges. So the maximum, I believe, by default is 3. Currently, we can have up to 6. We get +1 maximum power charges here, and then we also get +2 to maximum power charges here. Now, is this overkill? That depends. If you are consistently freezing and you are consistently holding up to 3 to 4 power charges and you're never going below that, this may not actually be that useful. However, you do get 20% increased critical damage bonus if you've consumed a power charge recently. Recently is usually 4 seconds. I think it's 4 seconds. I don't know if it's 8 seconds in Path of Exile 2. But basically, we almost just always have the 20% increased damage bonus because we're always consuming a power charge every 4 to 5 seconds, right? So right here is 60% increased critical damage bonus, which if you go to our main attack here, I Strike, we can look at our critical hit chance being at 39% and our critical damage bonus being at 356. So if we were to unspec these 4 nodes, we would lose 60% of this, but we would get 4 points to put into somewhere on the tree if you wanted to do that. Currently, I'm using 6 just because I'm still testing out as we're going higher in maps how harder is it to maintain those charges. So far, it's been a piece of cake, and I've been debating on respecing these nodes because I'm thinking the extra 2 is probably unnecessary at this point, but I haven't really figured out where I want to put that yet. I have a ton of options. So that's basically in a lump sum how the passive tree works, how our Ascendancy works, what our skills are. Right now, we're going to go over the gear. Now, the gear is very simple, okay? We are converting 80% of our physical damage to cold. We just stack physical damage. That's pretty much it. We're just fizz stacking here, 80% of it is getting converted to cold. The other 20% is staying as physical damage, which is fine too. It's good to do a little physical damage. If you just do one element like 100% cold and then you go against an enemy that's very resistant to cold, then you're going to have a hard time killing it, where the extra 20% or the 20% physical damage that's not converted may actually help, get the life pool down, or at least get the energy shield down. So, simple stats. Increase fizz damage here, flat fizz damage here, accuracy rating's always good, critical damage bonus is good. Now, what I would like to see is physical damage on here. Maybe instead of the accuracy rating, I'd really like to see attack speed. Attack speed is a great multiplier for damage. And then let's see. Yeah, instead of the accuracy rating on here, because we don't really need the accuracy rating, I'd like to see maybe the prefix here be a higher physical damage. You can get over 100% on one roll. You can get like over 150% on one roll. And then replacing this hybrid with cold damage would be good too. Or maybe hybrid fizz damage. I don't know. There's a lot of different things you can do. The main thing is you want a lot of fizz damage on your weapon. That's the main thing. A lot of fizz damage. You want a very high, as high as you can get this top end number, the better. A lot of your damage as a melee build is your weapon. It is not your skill level. Skill level helps, but you need a really good weapon. Everything else on here, health, resist, evasion, ES. Health, resist, evasion, ES. Health, resist, evasion, ES. Now with gloves, you can get some fizz damage to attacks. We got cold damage to attacks on here. I don't have any resistance on here, so I put some fire resistance on there. I could have just put life, but I like being resist capped. It feels good in maps. Again, life. We ended up getting armor and energy shield on here. Not as great. I'd like to replace these with some evasion ES boots at some point with like 30% move speed and some good life and a couple decent resists, but this is good for now. With the amulet before, we were using an amulet that gave us spirit, but again, we hit our merciless lab, so we don't need the spirit on the amulet anymore, so I swapped it for this one that gives us an okay amount of life and some energy shield. But it gives us +1 level to all melee skills, which is just a nice little added bonus. And then 30% fire resist, 40% lightning resist. Same thing with the rings. It's just, life resist. This ring is actually pretty bad. This one needs to be replaced next. My life rolls on these are pretty low, but it's so much elemental resist. Belt, same thing, 156 to maximum life, fire, cold, and lightning resist to get us to our resist cap. So gearing's pretty easy. I'm not using any uniques. You don't need to have a specific unique to make this build work. All you have to do is just craft your gear while you're leveling, or check the vendors while you're leveling. They'll have random gear in there that's pretty good. I had gotten some upgrade. I think this weapon actually started from a vendor purchase with the fizz damage, and we ended up crafting more onto it. So no chase uniques, nothing specific on the build that you need. You just get a decent weapon, get some life, get some resist, you're good to go. Okay, now let's see about showcasing the build. Like I said, I'm still kind of clearing, through the maps. Initially, I haven't completed everything. I have a tier 11 here. I haven't even ran tier 11 yet, but we got monsters or armored, so we're going to show how that doesn't really matter. Having a lot of fun with the mapping, by the way. I like the tree. At first, I didn't like it, but now that I played it and I kind of just understand how it works and how the towers work and how I can use these towers to add breaches everywhere, it's been a lot of fun. So I'm looking to see if maybe there is a breach somewhere I might be able to showcase on the build. Looks like we have one up here. Just a side note, if you guys are wondering where you get your hideouts from, there's these hideout nodes here that tell you what hideout you get from it. So you just run this map, clear the mobs. It's like a super mini map. Just clear the mobs, and once you clear it, you get the hideout, and then you can talk to Alva if you want to change it. So we'll go and pop our map in here. We'll get the breach. I can't promise I'm not going to die. I haven't been in a T11 yet. This is technically like the beginning of red maps, so... but I want to showcase the build. Now, there are two different ways that you can play this build. One is fast, but expends a lot of mana. The second one is a little slower, but way better on mana, and I think it's a little more satisfying. So I'll go over it. If you're looking at my skills here, you might realize I don't have hardly anything on here. I like playing builds. I was really big on Cyclone in Path of Exile 1. I like playing builds where I can just press one button, maybe two buttons, and just play the game, right? I don't want any complicated 5-button builds, set up this, set up that, make sure we got this going over here, and now we can finally burst. Now I just want to press one button to max. So the way this works, I'll show you the first build, which is just our left click. And we have a resistant minion here, which is good. So this is our Ice Strike. We immediately freeze the rare mob, so now we're just auto attacking, and that's pretty much it. That's Ice Strike. It's very strong. As you can see, with multiple mobs, it's fast. Like I said, the first 2 strikes port you to the enemy within a certain range. So you can kind of use it if you get trapped within enemies. You can use it to kind of teleport yourself out without actually having a teleport. But there is a better skill that we have, and that is Shattered Palm. So the way Shattering Palm works is we're going to right-click one enemy, it puts a Shattering Palm. We have blind on it, so this enemy is blinded. That's why he has the little white symbol here. But then when we kill them, they basically do more shattering. So the way this works is you dash to an enemy and strike them with an unarmed attack that manifests a wave of cold, coating nearby enemies in shards of ice. Dealing enough damage to these enemies will shatter the shards, causing an icy explosion that deals attack damage. The skill always strikes with your bare fist, even if you have a quarterstaff. So basically, it does this added cold damage on hit. The hit can't be evaded, has increased crit strike chance, and then it attaches shards to enemies within 3.8 meters. And then when they die, they explode for up to 350% of attack damage with the amount of added cold. The explosion crit chance is plus 11% with 100% more freeze buildup, and the explosion radius is 1.6 meters. So combining Shattering Palm with Herald of Ice, you're going to get some very satisfying shatters. And if you're like me and you really enjoy Breach League, then you're really going to enjoy playing this build, because Breach League just opens a portal, a ton of mobs basically just swarm you, and then you freeze one mob, you shatter it, and they all die. So left click, right click, left click, right click. Very easy. It teleports you over there, which is nice. However, something to keep in mind. If you are surrounded by enemies with Shattered Palm, I cannot hit this enemy and then target someone back here and then get past him. You will get blocked by the enemies. However, if you use Ice Strike, it does seem to find a way to get around the enemies. So you can probably use Ice Strike if you get trapped. But basically, right-click, left-click. We have so much evasion. Now, one thing we didn't go over, and I wanted to save it for showcasing kind of the damage on the build, is our support gems. But I wanted to showcase the damage a little bit and how the combat works so that the support gems make sense. So basically, Ice Strike, we have Inevitable Critical. Supported skills gain 25% increased critical hit chance each second up to 100%. This critical hit chance is lost whenever the skill supported by inevitable critically hits. So basically, it builds up. Once we crit, it goes away, and then it starts building up again until we crit, and then it goes away. And attached to our crit chances just ensures that we're critting as often as possible. Now, once we get our crit chance even higher, I'm thinking this might get dropped for something else, but I haven't been able to play around enough with other skills because we're still building that crit chance. I still don't know how high we're realistically going to be able to get our crit chance, if it's worth even trying to get above 50%, if we want to get close to 100%. So for now, we just want to guarantee that we're getting those crits in as often as possible. We have Martial Tempo for 25% more attack speed because we want to be faster. I also quality this skill to get 10% more attack speed so that we just make it as fast as possible. We have Cold Infusion, so supported attacks gain 25% of damage as extra cold damage. Supported skills penetrate 30% cold resistance and 25% more elemental damage. We also have supported skills have 40% more area of effect on our Herald of Ice, so when they explode out to a larger radius. We have +1 a level of supported cold skills, which Herald of Ice counts as a cold skill, so we get +1 level to that. And then 30% increased mana regeneration rate while a supported skill is active. We really just have this in here because we have the excess spirit to use it, so why not? I mainly put this in while I was leveling, again, just to make sure that we didn't have any mana issues while we were getting through the axe. Now, Tempest Spell is might be a little confusing why I did this, but basically what happened is I didn't really have good jewels, but because of the route I was taking on the tree, I ended up getting this jewel slot and this jewel slot. And then I think, yeah, I have one more over here. And the only good jewel that I had to use at the time was this one, which was not good at all, except for gain 1 rage on melee hit. I thought about it. I'm like, wait, if we can just gain rage, then each rage we gain gives 1% more attack damage at 30 rate at you know a max stack of 30, right? So 30% more attack damage. So I figured, why not just put that on the build, and then we just build that up while we're going. But then I was like, well, what else can we do with the rage? So I was looking through the support skills, and I found Rage Forged. Supported skills consume 10 rage if possible to deal 35% more damage. And then we have supported skills gain 3 rage on melee hit. This is on our Tempest spell. So although we don't really build around rage, there's still this very small node, this 1 point of rage that was on this jewel that kind of opened up this possibility to just do more damage with the Tempest spell. Now remember, we're hardly ever using Tempest spell except for rares and bosses. So to have 35% more damage on 3 hits on the bell is massive. So then we have supported skills have 30% less skill effect duration on our Ghost Dance. And then we have 30% increased recovery from life last while supported skill is active. Again, we just have this on because we have the extra spirit and nothing to currently put in it right now. I'm still wanting to play around with cast on crit, but it's 100 reservation, so I have to figure out how to come up with 39 spirit, and I haven't quite figured that out yet. Now, this one's very important. This is Shattering Palm. So this is kind of our opener while we're clearing. Supported skills have a 100% chance to blind enemies on hit. Attacks gain 35% damage as cold damage for 3 seconds on freezing an enemy with supported skills. Supported skills have Culling Strike against rare unique enemies. So basically, once the rare unique enemies are within... does it say it on here? I don't know. Yeah, it does. Okay, so at 10%, you can cull a rare enemy and unique at 5%. So basically, once a rare enemy is at that 10% life, we just right-click the button. They instantly die. It takes away the rest of that remaining HP. Right? So we have Culling Strike on here. And then we have Cold Exposure. Supported skills inflict cold exposure for 8 seconds on critical hit with cold damage. So the reason why I put it on here is because, remember, Shattering Palm has plus 9% to critical hit chance, and the Explosion has plus 11% to critical hit chance. So the way I'm assuming this works is we use Shattering Palm, we hit a mob, it gets Cold Exposure, we kill that mob, it explodes, and if that explosion crits, then we're spreading that cold exposure. I haven't gotten to play it. I just put this in last night, like slightly before I got off stream. So I haven't gotten to test this a whole lot to see if I can notice a huge difference. Things die too fast for me to be able to see what buffs are on them anyways, or what debuffs are on them anyways. So I may just have to get into harder maps, but things are still dying too fast on the monk, which is a good problem to have. We want it. We want our problem to be is that we're just killing too easily, right? Next thing we have Charged Infusion. We went over that, but we got the 4% of life recovered on kill while supported skill is active. And then with Combat Frenzy, we went over the 50% chance to grant additional charge and regenerate 1% of life per second while support skill is active. Again, we just have this because we have the extra spirit from the chest piece of evasion working together with Lead Me Through Grace, giving us 1 spirit for every 15 evasion rating on our equipped body armor. So that's basically all in all how the build works. We right click for Shattering Chill, we left click, they explode. So we'll kind of go through this map a little bit. I'll show you what happens when we put the bell down when we get to a rare mob. That'll be fun. It's pretty insane. Sometimes it feels just like it saves us from death very often. If we are in a position where we're getting swarmed or we're getting surrounded, we're running out of ghost charges quick, we need to start figuring out how to get out of there. Sometimes you just slam the bell down and the whole screen disappears, and it's just like, oh, well, found a solution to that problem. So when I talk about defensiveness on this build, one thing I really want to talk about is how to actually build defense in Path of Exile 2. So there are armor, evasion, and energy shield, and basically each kind of type of class will lean towards one more than the other. So your sorceresses and your witch summoners likely will be building more towards energy shield, and your monks will be usually doing a little more towards evasion, whereas your warriors may build a little more towards strength, building, and armor. So with us, we're building mostly into evasion and a little bit into ES. So we're looking for gear that specifically gives evasion and energy shield if possible. If it just has evasion, that's fine. If it just has energy shield, that's not so great. We really just want, like, our minimum really needs to be, we want evasion on the piece of gear, right? So as I shown before, we have 77% chance to evade. On our right click, we do the Shattering Palm. When it shatters, it spreads enemies. Those enemies are now blinded because Shattering Palm blinds, and then it explodes, and that explode blinds. So not only do we have a high amount of evasion, but we're also blinding enemies. When we blind an enemy, it just makes them even more. It makes it even more difficult for them to basically do any damage to you. So you're going to get a kind of a first glimpse at Breach and how Breach feels on our build. I think it's pretty good. I think Breach can be pretty scary sometimes. It really depends. I don't like this layout as much. It seems like we're going to get bottlenecked by these things. But yeah, we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, so this is a T11 map. I haven't even done a T11 yet. I'm not even there yet. And we are pretty much just shattering the content. Boom, put the bell down on this rare mob, it's dead. I don't even know if you guys got to see the bell go down, but it died. Another good thing about shattering is that what'll happen is, especially in Breach, you'll have a lot of small mobs. And those small mobs will surround the rare mobs. And what happens is when you destroy those small mobs, basically the explosion from Herald of Ice and the explosion from our Shattering Palm is what's the term is considered shotgunning. So basically a lot of AoE damage all around one character, all happening at once. So imagine like a shotgun shooting multiple pellets out at once, but all of those pellets hitting you all at the same time. That's what's considered shotgun damage. So with all the explosions of all the small mobs, which remember, we're killing those like this. All those explosions are all hitting the one rare mob all at the same time. So chances are there's a lot of times where you can kill a rare mob without ever having to even hit the rare mob, simply because the things that are dying around it are doing so much damage from their explosions that the rare mob just pretty much just gets deleted. So that's basically the lowdown of the build. I appreciate everyone who asked for me to make the video. This is my first time making a video. I promise that when I have the time and as we progress the build, I will have a more detailed video, a more structured and organized video. But I'll be honest, I stream on Twitch and TikTok pretty much every day except Monday, and I'm not a big streamer. Last night, a lot of people found me on TikTok. I hit the algorithm just at the right time, I guess. We weren't even playing the game. We were just streaming the patch notes. And then people were like, I want to see your build. You know, where's your build guide? Do you have a YouTube channel? You know, can you send me a link? And I'm like, I have to put this out today, or I'm just going to keep getting asked for my build. So I'm shooting this on my lunch. I took my whole lunch to make sure I got this video out before we go live today. So if you're seeing this video, I may already be live. So come check us out on Twitch or TikTok. Twitch.tv/nerfed with the Z at the end because I can't get nerfed for some reason. Nerfed on YouTube, nerfed on TikTok. Check us out. Come give us a follow. Come hang out. If you have any questions about the build, please ask it in the comments below. If you have any questions about the leveling experience, how endgame's going, any updates we might make to the build, I will put out other videos on the character when we make changes, kind of going over anything that was major. But yeah, so thanks for watching. Appreciate the support. Make sure you give the video a like and a share. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the game. Please stay away from the videos talking about how the end game's super hard and that it's not worth playing. Those guys don't know what they're talking about. Just get into the game, try it, have fun, and yeah, have a good rest of your day. Thanks.